Munch, Troy Shippers, myself, Cody Marinser, and Karen Marcel. And so thank you to the board of directors. Those are the people who come together and look at what we're doing with the stations, what we think God wants us to do with them, and how to best use all of your wonderful funds. So thank you so very much for donating. We really appreciate it. 785-621-4110. That's 785-621-4110. All right. We have the blessing to have, God willing, soon to be Deacon Bill Meagher in here. And he is going to talk to us about the family's role in creating disciples. Oh, man, this is going to be a good talk. I guarantee it. One, because Bill is in here and he likes to talk, and so it ought to go well. But two, just because this is so much a topic that our world needs to hear today. All right, before we get to Bill, let's get to one of your favorite parts, and that is the trivia question. All right, same number to donate: 785-621-4110. And if you get this right, we will put your name into a drawing. We draw that at the 6 o'clock hour, and that gives you a $50 gift certificate to Messenger Traditional Catholic Books and Gifts if you are the winner that is drawn. Jerome and Angela Schmeidler are the owners. Wonderful people, wonderful store. I went in there just yesterday on my break. Please go visit them and support them. 785-621-4110. Here is your first question of the 8 o'clock hour. What bishop, if featured every weekend on Divine Mercy Radio's Word, there's a typo there. What bishop is featured every weekend on Divine Mercy Radio's Word on Fire show? Is it A, Bishop Gerald Vinke, B, Bishop Robert Barron, C, Bishop Coakley, or D, Archbishop Aquila? What bishop is featured every weekend on Divine Mercy Radio's Word on Fire show? Is it A, Bishop Gerald Vinke, B, Bishop Robert Barron, C, Bishop Coakley, or D, Archbishop Aquila? 785-621-4110. All right. Without further ado, I want to welcome in Mr. Bill Meagher. How's it going, Bill?
It's great. How are you?
Fantastic, sir. All right. Bill is the Director of Youth Ministry and Religious Education for the Diocese of Salina. He's also the head basketball coach for Thomas More Prep Marian High School here in Hayes. He's married to Mandy. They have 3 children, Thomas, Andrew, and Emma. Bill has done a lot of things in his life, but currently he is helping our diocese in such a great way. Bill, what are we in here to talk about today?
Today, we're talking about the family's role in discipleship, in creating disciples. And so, and we can branch out all over the place. We can talk Eucharistic conference a little bit if we want to, but certainly one of my roles with the diocese is the family life office. And so we want to talk a little bit about how special families are and how they create young disciples of Christ, and then how those young disciples of Christ help you become a better disciple of Christ. And so we can talk about all those sort of things today.
Fantastic. So I see here that the bishop has recently brought the mission statement together. Let's be disciples of Jesus on mission to our diocese. Can you break that down for us? Tell us some more about it.
Yeah. So Bishop released it. And if you've read the register this month and then next month, he's going to break that down a little bit on what that is. But, we struggled for a long time to talk about what is our role as a diocese? What is our role as a chancery? And he prayed a lot about it and brought back to us this mission of together. Let's be disciples of Jesus on mission for our diocese. And really, when we talked about it, it fulfills all of us. And so today we'll kind of focus a little bit on the family part of that. But so in this last register, he wrote about what it actually means to be a disciple. And you and I both taught in high school here and kind of have seen some of the things where, I think in our diocese, we're pretty good sometimes at catechism classes and pretty good at knowledge information. But Are we creating disciples that have a living relationship with Christ, that are truly trusting their master and their leader with their lives? And so that's kind of what we're focusing on a little bit. I think, again, when you look at that mission statement and you see the family, it fits in pretty good.
Absolutely. I want to break in really quickly to congratulate Alice Fox. So Alice Fox is our trivia winner. Thank you, Alice. Related to Alice, great lady. She does a lot over in the Salina area. She's one of the people that helps to cook all of those wonderful meals and things. Yeah.
Isn't that a relation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I just said,
Oh,
but
sorry.
that's okay. Bill pays attention as much as I do.
Oh, man.
We are in on Divine Mercy Radio's Spring Care-a-thon. Come follow me. We're talking with Mr. Bill Meagher. He is in to talk about the family's role in creating disciples. We just got done speaking a little bit about how you were talking about, you can teach a lot of head knowledge, but that doesn't always create a disciple. Follower,
and when we see that as a teacher, and we also see that sometimes as parents, but we also see that sometimes in ourselves. And I know that there are times where I'm studying, especially right now taking deacon formation classes.
Yeah.
I mean, I've probably learned more about the faith knowledge wise than ever. But there are times when you look back and you say, well, you just spent a whole month learning about this. Did you actually grow any closer as a disciple? And that they're a separate thing in that way. And so I think it's a struggle for all of us, but it's also an awesome opportunity for all of us. And something that in a family, you get a chance to make sure that you're a disciple, and then you mentor your young people into being disciples as well.
Yeah, we actually talked yesterday with Father Nick Parker, talked about this word disciple and how to look at it in a new light, not just like teacher student, but like you're speaking in how do I have that relationship that actually makes me not just follow Christ like a little puppy, but instead as a, this is my Lord. How do I have a true relationship with him? And so where does the family then fit into that and the role they play for this discipleship?
Well, I think one, so when we're talking still with a little bit with the mission statement, I think the first part of it's togetherness. And I think together is a huge part of helping young people understand discipleship. And I think a word that might be a better word for us today is mentorship. As a disciple, just an understanding of that. But the togetherness is huge for kids. One, it helps us to understand the entirety of the body of Christ. And so our family and its togetherness and its connection and its sacrificing for each other and its valuing each other teaches us about the mystical body of Christ and the church, and an understanding that every creation, every single human being is part of the mystical body of Christ is what we want, and that we all value each other and we care about each other. And so families teach that. Along the way, families also teach what unconditional love looks like. And so, my mother, when I was young, she had this great phrase that she used with us all the time. She actually had two phrases, and I've talked about it over the years. One of them really upset me, and one I didn't really understand until I got married. The first one, actually, she had a third one too, but the first one she would always say is, she would look at us, especially when my dad and her were having some troubles or fighting or something. And, they went through the typical stuff that everybody goes through. He was working so hard at work and was coming home late and those sort of struggles. And she would look at us and she'd make a point of saying, your father and I will always love each other. And as kids, we needed to hear that. Yeah. And that built in us an understanding of like, hey, it might look rough tonight when we go to bed and everybody in the house seems like they're all mad at each other a little bit. But we get told all the time, especially in those moments, you don't have to worry. You don't have to stress. Your mother and I will always love each other. And that was important. And so we learned what unconditional love was. The other thing she always told us, which fits into this a little bit, but this one was one I didn't understand because I was, a little spoiled brat or whatever. She would look at us, she'd be like, I love your father the most. and be like, you don't love me the most? How can you not love me the most? And she would always quickly follow it up with like, look, you don't understand. If we don't have a marriage, then it's bad for all of you. And so I have to put him first, and I love him the most. And as a kid, that's an interesting thing for you to shuffle through and kind of understand. As a married person, then you start to understand like, the way to take care of your kids is to make sure that your marriage is strong, and that's what takes care of them. And so that's an important thing. And for us, when we send kids out into the real world, if they have not learned what unconditional love looks like, it's a scary world out there. Because it's hard to become a disciple and trust God will never leave you, will never forsake you, is always there with you, has unconditional love for you no matter what you do, if you didn't have that model in the family. And it can still be done, but it's a lot more difficult. And so that's one of the big things that families can help young people understand is God is never going to leave you. No matter what you do, he's always going to love you. And he has loved you before eternity. He loved you all time. And so that's a part that families can learn.
That's awesome. such wonderful words of wisdom here. As you were speaking, you used that word togetherness, and I just got to thinking. I mean, we don't have to go through everything that the world is throwing at us, but when you said togetherness, I was like, oh man, look what Satan is doing to tear us apart, even within our own families. I mean, just as it's mentioned all the time, but it's so true. Just all of the devices that we have, and everybody's now looking down and no, go away, go away. I'm busy playing this video game, and I don't know. Do you have anything to kind of say to that?
I do. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of sources and a couple things, and I cannot possibly emphasize these enough for families. And again, this is what I do is I work with families in our diocese. And so I am constantly looking at this stuff. I think the first thing to address is let's take a look at how much families are being attacked. And I can even take this a step outside and I can say, in the coaching realm, we work really hard to try to create a family in our basketball program. And in that microcosm of that, look at how many things are constantly trying to tear us apart there. Because they understand that if people can care about each other, can sacrifice for each other, love each other, that good things can happen. And so we actually get a lot of attacks trying to divide and split that in that area. And also because it's good for kids. And so Satan doesn't like anything that's good for kids when we can do those sort of things. One book that I have recently read, and I actually had a dad on our basketball team send me a podcast of it, and it was The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. This is a phenomenal book, and it's a book that will open your eyes to what the device culture has done to our young people. He can put together all the research that is out there. And now we're starting to get pretty good longitudinal research that will show us what the effects are. And he can pinpoint the beginning of the detriment of this stuff happened. The iPhone 4 is when it happened. Wow. Because it was the first phone that had a camera that faced you. And so all of a sudden we started having selfies. And he takes all the information and all the research and just shows, in all reality, what a cruel thing to do to young people. Have them take a picture of themselves, put it on the internet, and let people approve or disapprove of what it looks like in your most awkward, terrible stage. But the other research on it is, gaming is huge. And I don't think parents understand sometimes the level. There's addiction. And he said that, 10% of those who play games, gaming system stuff, become addicted. 20% it's problematic. And imagine what other sort of thing that could be an addiction that, ruins your life in many ways, or is problematic. And it's a 20% chance that you're going to have an issue with it. Think about in what other areas we would hand that to kids and say, yeah, no, that's fine. You'll be okay. Not to mention the fact that they're not out there building social things, not communicating, not all those other things that go along with it. But as a parent, I had, actually, I was fortunate. Chad Meitner at TNP sent that out in the newsletter. And then Mandy also sent that out at Holy Family. And she's already had a number of parents reach out to her going, oh my gosh, I did not understand this. I didn't realize this was, as important as this is. And so it's good information for them. So that would be my first one. Would be that one.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so very much. You are listening to 785-621-4110. Oh, sorry, you're listening to Divine Mercy Radio, our spring Care-a-thon, but that is the number to call to give us your pledge. Last hour, we had some funds given to us. We were given $2,000 for matching funds. So let's see if we can get those used up this hour. So those matching funds are pretty self-explanatory, but if you don't know, that means that as soon as you call in and donate, your donation is doubled. I keep saying it, but it's pretty awesome. There's not very many times in this world, unless you're somebody's child, that you get to use somebody else's money for free. This is one of those chances that you get to use somebody else's money. And guess what? Not just for free, but for something really good to build up the kingdom of God. That also doesn't happen real often. So Call in to 785-621-4110. Help us to keep this mission going. Lester and Danetta, who we just had on, who started these radio stations, they just donated $250. And Danetta is also one of our underwriters. An underwriter is not just like somebody who puts an ad on your show, but they are somebody who partners with us in our mission. And so we thank Danetta for being one of our mission partners, for starting these radio stations, and for Lester and Danetta's donation of $250. So that just became $500 through those matching funds that we had. Let's see if we can get them used up. 785-621-4110. We are in talking with Mr. Bill Meagher, talking about the family's role in creating disciples. Bill, we've talked a bit about some things. Let's break back into it.
I'm going to continue on just a little bit more on that book, just to kind of help people understand what is in that book. And again, I think it's a must read for parents right now. He puts the data in there to support these claims, but these are the 3 claims he puts in there. Social media and the selfie culture have damaged our young people's mental health. And there's a ton of data to back that up. You've worked in schools, you've seen it. Yeah. That's not a question. There are real threats that social media open our kids up to, such as our rise in human trafficking and, all those sort of interactions that can happen. Again, we talk about this. Would you let your kid walk into a room full of strangers all over the world that you don't know? You wouldn't. But with a phone, you give them access. And so that's part of it.
And blast all their personal information. Yeah.
Here's the biggest part of it. It's all fixable. We could fix it today. Yeah. And he talks about this being a collection action problem. People give their kids a phone in 5th grade or 4th grade, a smartphone, because everybody else in the school is doing it. And they don't want to let their kids, they don't want their kids left out. And they let them have social media in too young of an age, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. Why? Because everybody else is doing it and they don't want their kids left out. And so if groups of parents would talk to each other and say, hey, we think this is bad. We don't want to do this, but I need some people to go with me. Yeah. It's a collection action problem. Everybody knows it's bad, but they do it because everybody else is doing it. And so somewhere, someone has to be the first to stop it. And so he has some solutions for that. His solutions are: give your kids a flip phone until they're at least in high school, but middle of high school. Yeah. Which I gave my son a flip phone. He hates me every day for it. And you know what? I love it.
Parent.
I love it. Number 2 says no social media until they're at least 16, and you need to be able to monitor it. And I would move that age to maybe 17 or 18.
I would too.
He says phone-free schools are no-brainers. Nothing good happens when kids keep their phone.
Correct.
And if you think they're not checking it, if there's 1 phone or 2 phones in the school, everybody has to be connected, because no kid wants to be the kid that goes to lunch and doesn't know all the gossip and what happened earlier in the day. And so there's pressure for them all to have it. And then 4, we got to let them have fun and play. You grew up riding probably all over town. I did the same.
Actually, up north of town running around in the hills.
And so we got to let them have some more free play so they can learn. But it's an awesome book. I would recommend it. I think he does a great job of showing the research to back it up. And I think if we can get a number of parents to read with that, each community can start working on that. It plays a big factor in discipleship, because what is stopping these kids from developing a prayer life, developing a relationship with Christ? A lot of it is the distraction of social media, the distraction of gaming, and all those sort of things. And so, I think it's a must read for families.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's awesome. I want to read this book, but also just looking at it, we grew up. Now, I can't say we turned out just fine in every regard.
I don't think anybody would say that about us.
No, but we turned out just fine without social media. Like you said, the fear there is, well, but my child is going to get left out. You know what? If they're getting left out of harm being done to them, good. And I do understand there is going to be some of that, if you're the only one not on whatever name your site anymore, then yes, there may be some of that, but your kid's going to grow up stronger for having to deal with that even.
Yeah. And I think parents are going to have to be tough enough to fight through those thoughts. There's some research out there about pornography in our young men in junior high and high school, and it is just absolutely makes you want to throw up when you read it. There's also a lot of understanding of how pornography is starting to affect our young women in the same way, and the pressure on them to send photos that are inappropriate and all those sort of things. So I think, as Satan always does, he makes a little element of something where there's maybe some education or some social connection. But again, I would ask, do the risks or do the rewards outweigh the risks? And I think that's something that all parents need to ask themselves about that. And to me, it doesn't. And I think,
Yeah.
there's a lot of research to back that up. But, he talks a lot about how fortunate we were that we didn't have those things when we were growing up.
Yeah.
And I look back, people who say, hey, I'd like to go back and live my high school days over. Like, those people are crazy.
Those
That
people are
is the
crazy.
most miserable
Not me.
time ever. And I'm sorry if there's junior high or high school kids that are listening to this, but you're trying to figure out, like I watch you've got sons going through that too. They're trying to learn how to become men. And some days they act like men and some days they act like little boys. And there's an emotional middle in between. And that's just a really hard stage for kids anyway. And you go and you put this incredible pressure on them, and we can't be surprised that it's hurting them.
Absolutely. So we're on talking with Bill Meagher about the family's role in creating disciples. You're listening to Divine Mercy Radio's Spring Care-a-thon, Come Follow Me. And so that's what Christ is asking us to do in our marriages, in our single lives, wherever you are at. That's his call, is come follow me. So not to be a disciple in just a student manner, but to have a real relationship with him. And that's what Bill and I are getting into here, is how do we as a family create those disciples within our own sphere of influence. And so, Bill, let's get back to that about what are other ways then that parents can help young people meet Christ, and once again, not just follow him as a puppy, but to say, no, I really love this man.
I think kids learn best by watching.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the onuses on us as parents is to live that relationship. When I was young, I didn't actually watch my dad read the Bible very much. I knew he had one, and I saw it on his bedside, and it was green, and it had tabs, which I thought was awesome because my Bible didn't have tabs. But I don't know that I saw him reading the Bible very often, but I know that he did. And there you go. You got a green one with tabs.
Green one with tabs.
No, but that is cool. That's ironic.
That's not the same one, though, but it's
But what he did do, though, is, and I remember these, is on some Sunday nights, we would read out of this big Bible that had like pictures and things, but it was a lot of words. It wasn't mostly pictures.
Yeah.
But I remember reading Bible stories, and I think that is a huge way, particularly if the father is going to read the gospel stories or the Bible stories to the kids. I think it's a huge thing for kids to see. And we know that the Bible is God's word spoken to us. And so every time we hear from the Bible, God is speaking directly to us. And so that's one way that we can help them hear the voice of God and start to hear that voice, is to read it to them and discuss those. It's kind of scary to me how many kids, I'll be in practice and I'll make a joke about, Samson and Goliath, all sorts of different things. And people, they don't know their basic stories.
Yeah.
And it's kind of scary. And those are good family times. And so, that's one thing. And then also just praying with kids, and not just the before meal prayers, although I think that's a huge testimony for them. But on your way to school, just, I don't know what the word is, but just prayers that are not form prayers.
Oh yeah.
Just praying together, and it's spontaneous prayers.
Yeah.
And again, I got 2 junior high boys right now. They look at me like I'm crazy, but we get in the truck and we're taking them to school and we start praying. And then I make them say some spontaneous stuff. And they got the little awkward stage of like, thank you for mom. And thank you for this, but it's okay. And then I make sure that I pray with them as well.
Absolutely.
So that they can see that dad spends time in prayer.
Yeah.
And I used to go downstairs. I've got what I call the war room. It's where I watch film and all sorts of different things and work. And that used to be where I prayed, but I've changed that a little bit. And I started praying in the living room in the mornings because I wanted them to see that dad gets up and he prays.
Yeah.
And so I think those are things that are really important. Getting to mass every Sunday. Father Damien had this awesome homily this last weekend about, hey, we love seeing softball uniforms, baseball uniforms in church. And he said, because that's parents telling their kids that this is important to us and we're going, and we may not look like we're supposed to look, but we're getting to mass. Huge testimony to kids when you're out of town and you look up what churches around your area and you go. Those are some things that are easy ways, but then also just talking about God, like asking kids questions, do you understand that God has always existed? What is that? And let them, brain and talk and think a little bit on those sort of things. So I think that's ways that we can help them with discipleship along the way.
Yes, absolutely. You are listening to Bill Mayer talk about the family's role in creating disciples. Keep with us. I'll get to a second trivia question here in a little bit, but I want to remind everybody of our number to call in and donate at 785-621-4110. We do have those matching funds. And we already got, we broke into them a little bit with Lester and Danetta's donation, but we want to try and see if we can get those used up this morning. 785-621-4110. Let's get back to talking with Bill Mayer about the family's role in creating disciples. We're talking about how we can, as parents, be those examples that we need to be, help our children to fall in love with our Lord. And Bill, as you were talking, it did remind me, I mean, one, that I need to get back and do better. But two, I remember actually years ago when I used to get up in the morning and I would say these morning prayers and I would kneel down by my bed. And I remember my kids catching me one time praying. And that takes me back, like, yeah, I should do that more often.
Yeah.
So it's a good convicting moment of, I need to get back to that. Not that I want to put up a show or anything, but I know that back then, that's something really good, like you said with your dad, seeing that Bible, that's really good for your kids to see, because then they're like, okay, this is not just something that's talked about. This is something that's lived out.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. The research out there says the direction the father goes is where the kids will go.
yeah,
Something like 85%, if the
it's
father
crazy.
will go to mass and sings in mass, then the kids are 85% more likely to attend mass for the rest of their life. And and then that was a big thing my dad also did, was he made us participate in mass. And he had this little thump that he had that no one else in the church knew what he was doing. But if we weren't singing, he would hand us a book with the page open. That would be our first warning. And if we didn't continue, then there would be a little pop. And the expectation was, you're going to sing in church. And, for our young guys, the model of manhood for them is going to be the father.
Yeah.
And if he's going to be a guy that says, I'm not going to be vulnerable around you, I'm not going to show you in prayer because that's weak or that looks whatever, then that's the way the kids are going to go. And so it's really important for that.
Absolutely. And I think we need to uphold, obviously, our women too. But Bill, you're right that the numbers show that it's so important for the man to be that spiritual head that he's supposed to be. And I remember being at mass at St. Nick's and being in front of this guy. And I won't put his name out there because I'm careful to name drop in case people don't want it. But he was singing behind me and was just loud and unapologetic. And I was like, this is awesome. And after mass, I turned around and quietly said, thank you so much for singing. Because he's a parent of, I don't know, 5 or 6 children. And he said, well, yeah, it's just what I do. I mean, and it was a no-brainer to him. And so it was so good to hear this man at mass just belting it out, and I'm like, oh man. And so that was an example to me, even to this day, as you're saying, be that example that your kids need to see. And ask Father Andy about we won't go through it all, but Father Andy had one of those examples too when he was in high school, and an older kid was singing that helped him to move toward that discipleship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's get then into some more specific things on what families can do to help them, or do we want to back up?
Let's go on through the mission part then.
Okay.
Because we talked discipleship. And so the last part of that is on mission. And I think this helps us with discipleship as well, is family units can become powerful mission units when they're young. And this can be another part of really helping them become good disciples, but then also changers of the world, which is what we're called to be. And so this is things like, hey, you know what, we're going to get together and this Lent, we're going to go do drive-by prayers, or we're going to get together, we're going to go volunteer down at the food pantry at St. Joseph, or we're going to get together, we're going to go to adoration, or we're going to get together and you know what, we're going to not eat out one time a week that we normally would. We're going to put that money together and we're going to donate that to this, or we're going to go help with trick or treat so others can eat, all those different things. And so families become very good little missionary units as well that can go out and be missions together. And as they do those things, cool thing is they grow together as a family, they grow together as disciples of Christ, but then they're also out there bringing the gospel to other people. and evangelizing the good news through what they're doing. And so that's a very important part of that. And so it's great. There's a lot of different ways that you can live out a missionary life within a family. But also you want your young people to be people who look around in their community and go find ways to help other people. And so, whether it's, I got 2 sons, someday I'd like them to be able to look down the block and say, this old lady, it's hard for her to get out and mow her lawn. I'm going to go over there and take care of that for them.
Yeah.
Those are what we want. And so families have a big part of helping them to become missionaries.
Fantastic. You are listening to our spring Care-a-thon on Divine Mercy Radio. Come follow me, that wonderful call of Christ. And how are we doing that in our own lives? Please call into 785-621-4110 for your donations, or getting ready to do our second trivia question. So that's the same number, 785-621-4110. Call in. If you get this correct, we will put your name into a drawing. And then this afternoon this evening at about 6 o'clock, we're going to draw that winner. That winner will get a $50 gift certificate to Messenger Traditional Catholic Books and Gifts. The owners are Jerome and Angela Schmeidler. They're down on 10th Street right off of Main. Beautiful little store. Go in there and support them. We thank them for supporting us. And here we go with our question. Which son did Adam and Eve have first? Is it A, Seth, B, Cain, or C, Abel? Which son did Adam and Eve have first? A, Seth, B, Cain, C, Abel. 785-621-4110 for your guess, for your donation, or you can do both. 785-621-4110. We're in talking with Mr. Bill Meagher about the family's role in creating disciples. We stopped talking about how families can go on mission. And one thing is... and then I want you to jump back in, something that we've done in our own family. And this is, mission can also be through prayer, and it can be a little bit awkward, but we've gone on walking rosaries around town with our family, just a beautiful day out, pull the rosary out, go walk around. And I say it can be awkward because, not everybody out there is like, oh, look, they're praying, who knows what people are thinking, how people are looking at. But as we're praying for our community, walking around with our family, our kids are able to see that, we're living it out in front of everyone. So, Bill, what would you have?
I love that idea. One of the cool things, and this definitely helped with the missionary thing, is like any typical family, by the end of the day, we're exhausted.
Yeah.
And we come home and we eat, and then you sit around and you watch some sort of show or something. And so for Lent, Mandy and I decided, we're going to turn the TV off. We're going to go pray a family rosary every night.
Awesome.
And at first it was kind of a struggle, but then what I noticed as we went along was the kids started thinking through the day of what they were going to offer that rosary up for.
Uh-huh.
And they started seeing those prayers as valuable to help whatever cause they were trying to help. And so I actually took it to our basketball thing, and practices are miserable. That's just how practices are. Right.
Yeah.
And so I talked to the guys. I said, what do you do? And I know this is kind of a lost concept, but what do you do when things are miserable? You say, I'm going to offer it up. And so we actually started getting together in our huddle before and went around the whole huddle, and everybody told me what they were offering their practice up for. And I said, well, it's going to be miserable, so you might as well make something good of it.
Yeah.
And I actually, again, watched kids get an understanding that they were doing something good for someone out there in the world by suffering a little bit, or by praying. And so that's a huge missionary aspect. There's going to be times in our life where we cannot do anything about something that's going on.
Yeah.
But we can always pray. And that's a huge missionary thing. And that is what, the beautiful thing about the Liturgy of the Hours is that continually around the entire world, there are always prayers coming up from somewhere. And that's a beautiful image if you were in the sky and you can see those prayers, graces floating up to the heavens. So for us, that's a big part of developing the missionary spirit is prayer. So I love that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I want to congratulate Claire Beasley, who is our trivia winner. Good job, Claire. The question there was, which son did Adam and Eve have first? Correct answer there is Cain. That number that she called was 785-621-4110. That's the same number that you can call to donate to our wonderful stations that we have here. We do have all 5 stations that the Lord has blessed us with, and we want to continue doing great things and putting the word of Christ out there, getting the the truth to this world that doesn't want to hear it, but desperately needs it. 785-621-4110. Let's get those matching funds used up. All right. In talking with Bill Meagher, we're talking about the family's role in creating disciples, talked about going on missions, different ways that we can do that. And I want to get back to you, Bill, about on mission.
Yep. We're probably down to 7
Okay.
as we go. So, one of the things is I do believe, and obviously I don't believe God has told us that the family is a very large part of formation of disciples.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that we see is that Satan does attack those a lot. And whether it's financially makes it difficult on families and puts a lot of stress on it, whether it's time wise, whether it's distraction wise, whether it's temptation wise, if Satan can destroy families, he can destroy kids. Yeah. And kids that come out of those situations are much easier targets for him in adult life. And so there is some positive research coming out. And so one of the things that we've seen recently is there's actually, if you take a segment of time, less divorce happening of couples that are getting married sacramentally.
Yeah.
And that's a positive thing, because for a while that just continued to trend down. Now that could be because maybe not as many people are getting married, but the other positive note is there are less children that are living in households without a mother and a father in a family. And so that's another good thing too, that we're seeing some trends that direction. But you and I both know that we've seen a lot of families fall apart, and it seems like that's constantly happening. And I think that one of the things we got to understand is, if you don't realize that as a family, there's an adversary out there trying to destroy your family, at times you will not protect your family enough, and you will not understand that you have to do things to ensure that he doesn't get to mess up your family. And so I think one thing is just recognizing Satan's out there and he doesn't care about your family and he wants to ruin it.
Yeah, that as you were speaking, that reminded me of the Knights of Columbus put out these videos a few years ago, and I can't remember what they're called, but they're each about 12 minutes long. And in one of them, the priest says, he's talking specifically about the father of the home. And he said, Satan wants to destroy you so that when he comes to attack your family, there's no one left to defend them.
Yeah.
And he was specifically talking about pornography and talking about the dangers that are there. And then that also reminded me that I recently saw this in every bit of humor, there's some truth. And I recently saw this little parody type of clip, but it was Satan saying that he retired because TikTok is doing too good of a job. And I was just like, wow, there's a little bit of truth to that. I mean, obviously we know that he's behind all things that tear people apart, but there's a little bit of truth to that, that like, yeah, those attacks are going to come. And then, like you said, Bill, am I going to be man enough to say, this has to stop? What am I going to do to cut it out of my family?
It's one of those things you're going to have to make some purposeful choices. So this gets back to what we talked about earlier with social media and what we talked about with some of the other things. The two of the biggest destroyers of marriages right now, one is actually gambling is number 2.
Wow.
And pornography is right up there as well. And so these are things that, like, men cannot help but trip into in the society we live in right now. I mean, check your spam box of your email. It's just something that's going to be there, and you're going to have to purposely avoid certain things and say, I understand that this is something that is going to destroy my family. The sports betting stuff absolutely drives me crazy. I hate to see it being advertised on college campuses. Yeah. I hate to see this being advertised to our high school kids. In some ways, it reminds me of the cigarette advertisement, where if we can get them addicted at a young age, then we can have them forever. And so it's actually right now the number 2 destroyer of marriages right now is gambling. And the thing about sports betting that is incredibly dangerous is we all have this machoism idea that we know a little bit about the game. And so we're going to have an advantage. When we go to Vegas, we understand the odds are against us. We know the games are 60-40 and all those sort of things. But in sports, you're like, hey, you know what? I've watched a game or two I used to play. I can predict who's going to win or not. And part of that is you got to understand we don't know the information they know. They know the officials. They know who's feeling good, who's not feeling good that day. They know what the humidity in the gym is. They know all those things. But it's something where we're going to have to make some purposeful decisions, whether it's TV, what we allow in our house, whether it's social media, what we allow in our house, internet use, what we allow in our house, gambling and sports betting and all those sort of things while we allow in our house. We're gonna have to make some purposeful decisions that say we got to limit these things or stop these things in order for the good of our family.
Yeah. Now, why do you think, Bill, that Satan hates the family so much and wants to tear us apart?
Boy, that's a lot of I mean, I think if you look at the original Holy Family, you look at perfect surrender to God in Mary,
Yeah.
And trusting God in Mary, and then you look at total humility in Joseph,
Yeah.
and right there are two things that
That dude
he
is a stud.
absolutely cannot understand. And Joseph, the reason he's the terror of demons is because of his humility. And Satan just cannot get his head around that sort of humility. Even the fact he gets no words in the Bible
Yeah.
probably absolutely drives, Satan crazy. Like, how would this guy not want words in the Bible?
Yeah,
And I
really.
guarantee you, St. Joseph, who we just celebrated, was it Monday or earlier this week? I'm sure he's like, hey, that's okay. I'm just, it doesn't matter. I was happy to be there.
Wasn't about me anyway.
So, but I also think that, family has always been a large part of how God has developed us as disciples. And so he knows that is an avenue that can cause trouble. And then you look at the Trinitarian relationship as well. And so obviously you could tie that into it as well.
Yeah. Wow. A couple of things that I would mention then to people is, obviously we sometimes look at the Holy Family and we're like, well, I can't meet that bar. Well, it doesn't mean you shouldn't try. And there's really good things out there for us. Father, what's his name? He wrote the consecration to Saint Joseph. I can't think of his name right now. Bill will look it up for me. But there's a consecration to Saint Joseph. There's now I'm going to say this because the Marian one is more difficult. If you do the consecration to Mary, that like the original one, oh, thank you. I just got it. Father Don Calloway.
There we go.
He's the one who did the St. Joseph one. It's fantastic.
It's awesome. It's unbelievable.
It's amazing. The original one to Mary, there's a couple different ones now, I think. There's a 33-day consecration that has been condensed. And if you're looking for something that people like me sometimes need things dumbed down. And that's okay. And so if you're like me, these are both great ones. I don't remember which the 33-day one to Mary is the easier one. But you can find it. But yeah, that one to St. Joseph by Father Don Calloway is fantastic. And so I would put that out there as a resource to help you get on that spiritual path and help get Satan out of your family.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, just recognizing that there are going to be attacks and that you can be defensive in that nature. Now, this isn't something we should all panic and worry about. It's kind of like with exorcisms. If you think you're getting bothered by something, the first thing they tell you to do is go to mass regularly, go to confession regularly, receive the Eucharist. And in almost all cases, once you've put that coat of armor on, or you that connected with the sacraments, you're pretty untouchable. If you're a family that will pray together, if you're a family that will get to mass together, if you're a family that spends some quality time with each other, Satan, he can do all he wants to do, and he's not going to mess with your family. Those are some of the key things. And so when we say defense, we really mean offense. Go put together time for prayer, spend some quality time together. Make sure you get to mass every Sunday, and do those things, and Satan can't touch you.
That is a great way to put it. Be on the offensive. I like it. Listening to our Divine Mercy Radio Spring Care-a-thon. Come follow me. We've got that Care-a-thon goal of $125,000. We had some funds given to us earlier this morning, and those are matching funds. So when you call in with your donation automatically gets doubled. Let's use up those funds. 785-621-4110. We are talking with Bill Meagher about the family's role in creating disciples. And Bill, I think we're to that point. We've already teased it out a little bit of starting to give people some good resources on what they can do to take home and help their spiritual life, help their mission of their family. Can you start giving some of those?
Definitely. Another must read for me that I think, and we're going to actually bring this author into our Eucharistic conference here in August. I got a chance to listen to him in person at a marriage symposium in the Archdiocese of Kansas City a couple weeks ago. His name is Brad Wilcox, and he wrote Get Married, Why Americans' Families Must Defy and Forge Strong families and to save civilization. So what he is he's a sociologist at the University of Virginia. He's also the director of the Institute for Family Life and Marriage. And he put together all the research. Cody, you would be blown away by this book. And I must have said to myself 30 times when I read it, why didn't I have this book when I was teaching high school kids? Because what he's done with the data and the charts and the graphs, with also anecdotal evidence, and it's an easy read, is he has shown all the lies that Satan puts into our young people about married life and families, and he's shown them to be lies. So he busts through all the different myths. You'll have more money if you don't get married. Career is everything. Go after your career, then try to get married. You don't want to save yourself for marriage. You should have lots of partners before you get married. Then, looking all the different things that all the different things that Satan is trying to teach us. He cuts through all that stuff with data and shows that none of that is true. It is amazing. It is something that I'm raising kids, so I'm glad I read it. That, one of the things that it started, I've always talked about it. You got to pray for your kids as future spouses. Boy, it really lit me up. Like, man, nothing will affect our young people more than the person they spend the rest of their life with in marriage.
Yeah.
And right now they're in the same muck and mess that our kids are in. And so they could use us praying for them. And so that got me fired up praying for our kids as future spouses. But anyway, just a really, really good read. Kids need it because right now we can give them just a little bit of faucet level amount of information about the beauty of marriage and how wonderful it is and how God designed it and all those sort of things. And kids are awesome and families are awesome, but the world is got a much bigger spigot into the kids' lives. On average, right now, our young people are spending 5 to 9 hours on social media in a day.
Holy cow. 5
to 9 hours. And that's 5 to 9 hours of education that marriage will hold you back. You don't want to spend the rest of your life with somebody. They even talk about you don't even want to sleep in the same room with people, the person you're married to, because they snore and all those sort of things.
Cow.
And our kids are drinking this up all over the place. And so parents need to be equipped to be able to show their young people what the real research looks like. And then also to be able to help them see the beauty of marriage and family.
Funny that you say that because a couple of years ago in one of my classes, I showed them this secular, I think it was even on like PBS or something. So completely secular. And they had these people on, a married couple, a single person, a divorced lady. And they were able to show that those people who were happily married, so invested into their marriage, had actually, more disposable income, were happier, lived longer. And it was a completely secular thing where the people on it, they weren't even really interested in sharing those facts, but had to because that was the truth of it. And so,
the data does not support the lie that is out there.
Yeah.
And it's not even close. And so our kids need to be able to see that though.
Okay. Next one.
Next one I would, recommend is we talked about the anxious generation. Absolutely. That's a must. The next one I'm going to put on there is called Victory Favors the Fearless.
Yeah.
If you've got a junior high or a high school kid, I would definitely have them read this. This is a book that I buy a lot of copies of and I hand out to a lot of different places. And so this is written by a sports psychologist. His name is Darren Donnelly. He actually lives in Kansas City. And so they're kind of fictitious stories to teach young people mentalities and things that they need to be successful. He's a Catholic sports psychologist. And so in this one in particular, our kids are scared of a lot of stuff and that's what is affecting their behavior. So the fears that he's cutting through with them is the fear of what other people think, the fear of you're doomed for a failure, the fear of change, the fear of making a wrong decision, the fear of missing out on something better, the fear of failure being permanent, the fear of it being difficult. So those are the 7 fears. And it is amazing to me how many kids that I've coached or worked with, 1 or 2 of those fears were absolutely holding them back in life and on the floor and in all areas. And so it's a really great book. Plus it's engaging, it's sportsy. And so kids enjoy reading it. But I would definitely find a copy and there are audible books, 2 of them. But Victory Favors the Fearless by Darren Donnelly. And even as a team, I've used it because, we've had some trouble sometimes where we're afraid to go out there because it's like we play not to lose instead of playing to win,
Oh,
because
yeah.
we were afraid. And our kids are in the same boat right now, and we have to teach them to go be courageous and fearless. And if they fail, guess what? Mom and dad are here. We're going to help you,
Yeah.
and it's going to be okay.
Wow, that is great stuff. That also brings up in me yesterday. Michael Lager was in here talking a little bit with me, and he spent a little bit of time in seminary, and this was great information that he passed on, because he said they were taught, especially when it comes to homilies, if you stop reading, you stop learning. If you stop learning, you stop being able to teach, and I would say, or you stop being able to lead. And so, I know that a lot of people out there are like, I don't read. And I get it. I have trouble reading. I'm one of those people where my brain goes 400 different places. You read a whole page and you go, I didn't take in any of that. Do it anyway. The more that we read, not just to look how smart I am, but the more that we read on things like Bill is giving us, the more we'll be able to go, oh, I can see that. Yeah. And this is how I can apply that. So yeah, don't stop reading. Don't stop learning. Don't stop being able to lead.
Yeah.
So
the next one I have for people is called Blessed and Broken by Father Joshua Johnson.
okay.
He's kind of trendy from a standpoint of like he's been at NCYC's and a few of those bigger conferences. The reason I would suggest this for parents is I have not read a book. The only person that I've listened to that helps me understand how bad I desire to be a disciple of Christ is Bishop Vinke. Besides Bishop Vinke, when he talks about discipleship, Father Josh does an amazing job, and he has a very relatable story, and the way he came to understand God's love for him, and the way he can express that in a manner that is very easy for kids to receive and understand. It changed my prayer life, and it changed even my understanding of my value to God. And I read it when I was probably 40, is when I read it. And so,
Wow.
I think if you struggle sometimes to explain some of those things to your kids, which is very natural and normal,
Yeah.
I think if you give them this book and let them kind of get engaged into it, or again, audiobook or something, a podcast or something, some way to give it to them, I think they will be drawn in instantly with his story. And then just, we all want to feel what he feels about the relationship he has with Christ. And I would say, again, second only to our Bishop Vinke on being able to describe that for people.
That is a wonderful resource. It sounds like I'm going to have to take this list home, and sometimes I buy too many books, but I need to just start reading through the ones I have. But these I got to get through. All right, we've got about 5 minutes left with Mr. Bill Meagher here. You're listening to our spring Care-a-thon. Come follow me, 785-621-4110. Call in with your donation there. But let's get back to Bill, because we want to get to something that both him and I have even used in classes, and that is the search series on Formed. Bill, what can you tell us about that?
Here's what I can tell you. There's actually a new one out that is a little bit modified for junior high and high school kids. The Search Begins. The Search is an awesome, and I would just sit this down as a family and go through it yourself. And so again, Cody and I have taught in high school, and so we know the struggles that kids have. And this is an incredibly systematic approach to help kids understand God fully. So the first one is, who do you seek? The second one is, who are you? The third one is, why a God? The fourth one is, what is our story? The fifth one is, who is Jesus? Sixth one is, am I saved? And then the natural finish is, why a church? And so it just answers all those questions systematically. It's incredibly well done. It's engaging. It's entertaining. It's beautiful. It moves your emotions. And it's just a really great thing. And so all of our kids are struggling with all those questions, like, why do I exist? Okay, so I believe that there's a God, but why this God specifically is the right God when there's all these other gods? And then, well, will I be saved? I do now believe there's a God, but does that mean I'm going to be okay? And then the last question that is always the biggest one is like, yeah, I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. But why does it have to be inside a church? And so it takes them all the way through that. And so just as a family, maybe that's a Lent thing. Maybe it's an Advent thing. It is awesome that there are 7, which fits pretty good with Lent. And so so that might be something, but I would definitely, especially if you're struggling a little bit, and we're all in that boat, to be able to explain to your kids some of those questions they're asking. You say, hey, you know what? I'm going to learn together with you. We're going to sit down and we're going to watch this and we're going to discuss it. I don't have all the answers myself. I think that'd be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and the way that they did it, Bill's exactly right. You know, kids are so inundated with videos and stuff that most of the time, if you try to watch something in class, they're like, I found that kids were actually really engaged in this.
Yeah.
It's very well done. And I would recommend it also. All right. Last resource that we have for them then.
Yep. The last one is for some of our younger families. This is on form.org, which right now, thanks to Bishop Vinke, the diocese provides free memberships for everybody within our Salina diocese.
Yeah.
So these are little episodes of some things that younger families can work on. It's called The Catholic Parent. Again, you know, we should never feel like it's a bad thing if we can't explain stuff to kids. We should just
Yeah.
say, let's go learn together. And so
Absolutely.
this is for some people like, why a Sunday obligation? What is confession? And you can go through these things even before they go to the confession, just to learn about them. What is family prayer? What does it look like? What does it mean to sacrifice? Why is generosity important? Why is it important to hand on the faith? And so it's just a really neat little series. The parents of younger age group kids, but you could also do with older age groups too, can take their kids through and just say, hey, you know what? We're going to spend a few minutes on a Sunday night. We're going to kind of go through these a little bit and just talk a little bit. But those would be some of my recommendations. And you know, we'll continue making recommendations as we go. But you know, I just don't think that parents and families right now can get enough help, because they're also being inundated with a lot of information that this is important. And so we'll continue out of the Family Life Office trying to help find good resources for families to help them with that.
That's wonderful. All right. We are in on our spring Care-a-thon talking with Mr. Bill Meagher about the family's role in creating disciples. 785-621-4110 for your donation. 785-621-4110. All right, Bill, we've got, 60 seconds or so left. So I know that's difficult for you and me, but is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think we need to leave our listening audience with today?
You know, one thing I think prayer. So grandparents, great grandparents continually inundate your grandkids and your kids who are parents now with prayers just constantly. They need those graces. It's a difficult time right now to be a parent, and it's a difficult time to be a young person. Parents, pray. We've got a number of these on our website that you can pray for your kids, pray for their future spouse, pray for your marriage. So if you go to the Salina Diocese webpage, we've got some prayers for you, but just there's nothing more important in this day and age than praying for our families, our young people, and just family and marriage in general. So if I had 60 seconds to say, which I'm probably about out of time now,
you're okay.
I would say, instead of stressing and worrying right now and talking with everybody else around you about the negativity and what's going on and those sort of things, spend that time in prayer and entrust the Holy Spirit to help move families and help guide families in the direction they need to go. And that's a much better use of our time than anything else that we can do.
Yeah, we can either spend it doom scrolling, or we can spend it building our spiritual life.
And when you want to know what to do, think about which one Satan doesn't want you to do, and then do it. Satan absolutely does not want you to pray. So that's exactly what we should do.
We got to end on that, because that is a great final word. Thank you very much, Mr. Bill Meagher. Appreciate it, man. God bless you. We'll be praying for you in your diaconate.
Thank you.
Be praying for us. You are listening to Divine Mercy Radio Spring Care-a-thon. Come follow me. If you would like to donate, call into 785-621-4110, 785-621-4110. I'm going to let Mr. Michael Lager come in here for just a few minutes. He's going to give you an update on a few things, and then we'll be right back on the air with our next interview.
Good morning, Divine Mercy Radio. This is your assistant director, Michael, here. Just to welcome you on the final day of our Care-a-thon for the spring of 2024. It's a beautiful day outside. Been wonderful weather here in Hayes, at least. I hope it has been for the rest of you. So I just want to give a great big thank you to everyone who gave us matching funds, and for everyone that's donated so far. Watching the money pour in to help us stay on air has just been amazing. The first year I knew a little bit about, what went on here at Divine Mercy, but not a lot. And just seeing it from, a much more real standpoint has been just huge for me. So I want to say thank you to everyone. And just to mention again, Cody will come here and announce it again, but, feel free to come in and ask Cody a question, to call call in. You can get that on air, and we'll put you in there, and we'll let Cody just answer a question. You can just ask him, ask the guest anything that you want. We'd love for you to have to call in. So Cody will get you that number here again when he gets back on. But I want to ask out in Colby right now we have weather spots open for our underwriting. So there's an underwriting opportunity in Colby right now and the weather plays pretty much every hour. So whichever business wants to pick that up, you're going to get your business read out a whole bunch during the day, more so than just a normal underwriting spot would out in Colby. So love to encourage that. Just some business out there, if you're looking for a place, and Divine Mercy Radio is a great place for your business to be welcome at, because unlike a lot of stations, we don't have programs that are skippable. We're not playing music where it's like, I don't like that, I'll flip the station. No, our listeners are loyal listeners, and they stick around. And I know they support the businesses of those who are underwriting. You can go to our website even and look who underwrites there. We have a whole section dedicated to everyone who underwrites and supports Divine Mercy Radio. And, I wanted to encourage people to check out the YouTube. If you have a young person in your life, we know that young people's attention spans are just getting shorter and shorter. And I know a lot of my friends that they have to have something in the background when they're eating, working, cleaning, doing anything. So go and show them the YouTube page, or even Facebook. Everything from the Care-a-thon saved. So just have them go back and look at that, and they can put on whichever Care-a-thon video that they want to in the background. So thank you again, Colby Underwriter. We got a spot open for that weather spot. So go ahead, call in if you want to get your business here on Divine Mercy Radio. And thank you very much. I'm going to hand it back over to Cody, and we'll move on with our programming.
All right, welcome back to our spring Care-a-thon, and we are on with Divine Mercy Radio. Come follow me. That is the great commission of our Lord. Come follow me. So we are getting ready to bring on our next guest here. And we've got her on the phone. And so I'm excited to get to her interview here very quickly. But first, I want to do our trivia question of the 9 o'clock hour. And that question is, which apostle had a mother-in-law that was sick? Which apostle had a mother-in-law that was sick? Was it A, Peter, B, Thomas, C, Matthew, or D, John? Which apostle had a mother-in-law that was sick? A, Peter, B, Thomas,